That trailer for Spider-Man Brand New Day was so hype. I watched the leaked version last year, but this final cut is a little different. Honestly, I thought they were just gonna officially put out the same one that leaked, since that's what they did with the No Way Home trailer. And back before we even knew what the title of this movie was gonna be, there were all these rumors about whether MCU Spider-Man 4 would be another large-scale multiversal movie or something more street level. And I'm glad that we are finally getting the latter. When they announced the title of the movie to be Spider-Man Brand New Day, I already felt like that alone was an indication that we're getting a street level movie. But then they announced that Jon Bernthal would be reprising his role as the Punisher in this movie, and then the level of hype just escalated. And now we got the trailer and finally got to see Frank Castle interact with the web-slinger. I never ever imagined that this would happen, but it was so fun to see. Now by the time I've got this video out in the wild, the trailer would have already been out for a week or two. And if you're super hyped, you've not only watched the trailer a bunch of times, but you've also probably watched a bunch of trailer breakdown videos on YouTube as well. Me too, yo! Me too! Shout out to 7 Webheads, shout out to A Bit of Everything, shout out to the Cosmic Wonder, shout out to the Canadian Lad, but most of all, shout out to Wifey who inspired me to commit to making this breakdown video of my own. I haven't watched new Rockstar's breakdown, but they're the ones who will probably get the most views. And if you've watched all of them and you just can't contain your excitement, well, here's yet another trailer breakdown video for you. And some of this will be inspired by videos I've also watched from the content creators I've mentioned, but some of it will also be my own personal takes. So let's get into it. The trailer literally starts off with Peter hanging upside down, up high in the sky on his phone. This was a cool shot to kick off footage of the new movie with, and my mind went straight to that scene in Across the Spider-Verse where Miles is chilling with Gwen upside down, up high in the sky somewhere. I don't think we ever got a shot like that in a live-action Spider-Man movie, so this was cool to see. His web shooters are so much more attention-grabbing than ever before. Also, right from the beginning, we can already see how the cinematography is quite different through the lens of the new director, Destin Daniel Cretton. His directorial vision makes New York City look a little grimmer, and honestly more relatable too, coming from someone who lived in New York City and still spends a lot of time there. And that's especially ironic given that a lot of the movie wasn't even actually filmed there but overseas in Scotland. There's a tad less saturation which is consistent all throughout the trailer, and that already makes the movie feel more realistic just from a cinematic standpoint alone. And the look of the movie also lacks that cleanliness that a lot of modern films seem to have these days, if you know what I mean. And if you don't know what I mean, I will leave a link to a video essay that does a good job of explaining that. Now the next part I want to touch upon is this close-up shot of Peter's eye inside of the mask, which, not even 30 seconds in, very quickly became one of the most talked about parts of the trailer. I've seen people criticizing it because Spider-Man's mask is supposed to be close to skin tight, so the areas that cover his eyes are not supposed to be like inches away from his face. People have also compared it to the inside of Iron Man's mask. Now the thing is, I think this shot was done on purpose just for dramatic effect. You hear Peter sighing during the shot, which is just signifying how jumping off of the top of a building in the sky is so normal for someone like him, and yet he is also still a human being, so it's also somehow, in its own way, meant to also be relatable. I don't think this shot was meant to be at scale, but just to help portray emotion, and that's all. I don't think it's any deeper than that. The song in the trailer was more prominent in the leaked version, but here for some reason they reduced it to just the instrumental. I kinda wish they at least kept the line, "New York, I love you, but you're bringing me down," since it's literally the title of the song and it fits so perfectly with the themes of the movie, at least from what we can tell from the trailer. The synopsis of the movie explains that Peter has all but abandoned having a social life and is focused almost entirely on being Spider-Man. And we're going to talk more about this later. The next part of the trailer we cut to was the first of quite a few connections to Daredevil that this trailer has. At least that's what this was for me. Spider-Man receives the keys to the city, and the event is publicized by Sheila Rivera, played by Sabrina Guevara, reprising her role from Born Again. If you've followed my content, you know that I'm also a big fan of Daredevil and have wanted to see a team up between him and Spider-Man in the MCU for over a decade now. So seeing Sheila show up in the trailer, that right there was already another element of hype for me. And because I'm also such a big fan of Daredevil, her being here in the trailer, giving Spider-Man the keys to the city, this is a major talking point for me. Referring back to the timeline of the MCU, No Way Home takes place in 2024, Born Again Season 1 takes place 3 years after that in 2027, Brand New Day takes place in 2028, and this video that you're watching is published in the middle of the second season of Born Again. Given that the whole show will be out before the movie does, I think it's safe to say that it also takes place beforehand. And depending on how Season 2 ends, maybe Wilson Fisk will no longer be mayor, but I am not sure if that means Rivera takes his place. She mentioned in Season 1 how she's been around long before Fisk showed up, and she'll still be around long after he's gone. So if she had any ambition of being mayor, I feel like she'd already tried to run and never got elected. So I am not sure if this is her as the mayor herself giving the keys to the city to Spidey. And part of the reason for that is she herself became complicit in Kingpin's crimes. Remember at the end of Season 1, she betrayed the police commissioner and told Kingpin about how he planned to go to Albany to try to get Kingpin out of power, which directly led to him getting brutally murdered. And by then, she knew Kingpin's true colors, even though she, along with everyone else in the world, should have already been aware of that. So she definitely knew that her betrayal resulted in Commissioner Gallo's death. And this betrayal has to come to light in the second season of Born Again. I mean, yes, she herself became entrapped by Kingpin too, but as I alluded to just now, she should have already been fully aware of the monster that Kingpin was, and yet she proceeded to be his advisor anyway. And when she gets exposed for being responsible, albeit indirectly, for the commissioner's death, I don't think Daredevil or Brett Mahoney would allow her to work for the mayor, let alone be the mayor, because someone like that simply can't be trusted to be in power. And I'm saying all of this here just to say that maybe this scene is low-key a red herring. The key to the city isn't always publicized by the mayor of the city anyway, but if you watched my collaborative video with Real Ball Knowledge, then you may not be surprised to hear me suggest that a very cool cameo in this movie could be Zohran Mamdani being the one to give Spider-Man the key to the city, with Sheila being one of the public servants standing by his side. Now the next part of the trailer is the first of another set of connected scenes regarding a tank that Spider-Man is chasing, but it's also another part of the trailer that raises up the hype gauge even more because we finally get to see Spider-Man and Punisher on screen together, and that is just absolutely a monumental moment for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The trailer with just these few lines captured the dynamic that these two totally different vigilantes operate with. Other commentators have explained that this shot is similar to the opening of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, where Andrew Peter gets hit with a truck but also uses that as his ride to his commencement. Punisher just being in the movie is another Daredevil connection to me, since we've seen the two of them team up in several instances already. But on screen, they're both R-rated vigilantes, while Spider-Man is far less brutal most of the time. Now the interesting thing is that Spider-Man addresses Punisher on a first-name basis, which asserts that the two of them have already been acquainted by the time we get to this part of the movie. And before this, neither character ever even acknowledged the other's presence in their own TV shows or movies respectively, so I kinda hope they don't go straight to them already knowing each other and skip over the introductions. I want them to show us what it was like for them to meet each other for the first time. It's important to note that Punisher One Last Kill is also coming out before Brand New Day. Anyway, in this scene it looks like they're both chasing the tank, but Spider-Man wants to do it his own way without Punisher interfering. Eventually he gets Frank out of the way and also silences him by webbing his mouth shut. But can I just say how Spider-Man shot his web with such force that it's basically slapping Punisher across the face? Like, we've seen Spider-Man in live action silencing people before, but here, he's doing it with such velocity that it's sort of a power move from him. Or, I'm overthinking it and that's just how John Bernthal portrayed Punisher getting his mouth webbed shut by Spider-Man. Another scene that comes in between this is the drop of water, which Spider-Man seems very sensitive to. Now, while it obviously isn't a connection to Daredevil, this immediately reminded me of Season 2, where Matt Murdock is experiencing hypersensitivity, and because he has supersonic senses, the hypersensitivity for him is like 10 times worse than the average person. What Spider-Man is going through must be similar, except with his Spidey sense. Also, this is one of the clearest shots in the trailer of Spider-Man's web shooters. They're so conspicuous on his wrists. Neither Andrew Garfield's web shooters in the Amazing Spider-Man series nor Tom Holland's web shooters in his previous trilogy were ever this conspicuous. So while watching the trailer, one way to tell the passage of events is whether Spider-Man is sporting these mechanical web shooters or not. In whichever clips he doesn't have web shooters, that either means they edited the web shooters out of the shots to misdirect us, or it means that at that point in that scene, he's moved on to organic web shooters. Mac Gargan's ferocious return as the Scorpion. I've seen people say that this suit is the exact same design as the one from the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man cartoon. I suppose so, but the only episode of that show I watched was the Daredevil one. Because Scorpion has gone from wanting revenge on Peter nearly 10 years ago to seeing Spider-Man as just someone in his way, some have speculated that maybe he is also being mind-controlled by Jean. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I'm thinking that he might just be working for Tombstone, played by Crondon, who himself, I am suspecting, is working for Kingpin. More on Scorpion later, but I just want to say it's so great to finally get Michael Mando back on the big screen. He is a fantastic actor. Anyone who has seen Better Call Saul knows this, and if they just never planned on tying this up as a loose end after Homecoming, I would continue to be disappointed. So it's great to see them meeting expectations for once. With how much this movie's got going on though, I'm not sure how important of a villain he's gonna be, but again, we'll talk more about Scorpion later. We cut to the third out of 3 connections to Daredevil, and that's Spider-Man, maskless mind you, fighting the Hand. We first saw these villains in a major role in Season 2, also in Iron Fist Season 1, and finally in The Defenders. There is a rumor that the Hand storyline is getting retconned, and the fact that the ninjas' clothes are quite different from how they appeared in the Netflix series gives credence to that rumor. However, with how messy the production and reincorporation of the Netflix MCU has been into the rest of the MCU, I think it's in their best interest to just revive the Hand storyline from where it left off instead of retconning it from scratch. And as for the Hand's role in this movie, another rumor I've heard is that Tombstone hired them to take Spider-Man out. And if Tombstone is working for the Kingpin, it's likely that he researched Daredevil's enemies and sought them out as a resource and told Tombstone to employ them. If this is what ends up happening, I don't think it'll all get explained in this way, but the plot will just involve something to that effect. And then we quickly cut to the next most talked about scene in the trailer after the one with the inside of the mask, and that's Peter's scleras going black. The way the trailer's cut is meant to make the viewer believe this happens in prison, since Peter's maskless and his webs are so strong that it destroys the sword being thrusted at him. But commentators who've gotten a more detailed look were able to uncover that MJ is visible in the reflection of Peter's eyes, complete with her hat, the city lights, and the skyline too, which suggests this is happening in the same intimate scene we saw earlier in the trailer. The background is also dark, which suggests this is a nighttime scene, which lines up with that same scene from before, and could mean this is Peter attempting to confess his love for MJ, but the beast within him sort of ruined the moment. And then we cut to what is arguably the most talked about scene from the trailer, which is Spider-Man lunging from a vantage point toward a bunch of ninjas. The reason why this scene is so hotly contested is because there was a shot at the end of No Way Home's trailer, which we all know had a false veracity to it. The Legacy Spider-Man were digitally removed, so the most popular theory is that Daredevil, among other possible candidates, was removed from this shot. There are 6 ninjas in the shot total, and the 3 positioned lower seem to be lunging mostly forward and not forward and upward like the 3 positioned higher, who are definitely lunging directly at Spider-Man. Now, first of all, let me just get this out of the way. Even though the fan favorite theory at this point is that Daredevil is in this scene, I do not believe he is there, nor do I want him to be there. And this is coming from the person who started this video off by telling you that I've wanted to see this team up for over 10 years. So let me explain. This movie already has Punisher and the Hulk confirmed as guest characters, but major crossover characters, and we may have a third crossover character depending on who Sadie Sink is revealed to be playing. With all of this in mind, there is already more than enough of a supporting cast. So if Daredevil is secretly in this movie, then he will probably have a small amount of screen time. And that, in my opinion, is actually disappointing compared to him not even being in the movie at all. And the reason I say that is because at this point, Sony and Disney have to be aware that a Spider-Man and Daredevil team-up is arguably the highest crossover in demand right now from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So with this movie featuring Sheila Rivera, who debuted in Daredevil, Punisher, who already has a history with Daredevil, as well as getting his own movie, One Last Kill, in May, 2 months before this, and also The Hand, who has already gone after Daredevil in this fictional history, what I think they are doing, or what I hope they are doing, is setting up Daredevil and Spider-Man to have a massive crossover story and saving that as the main event of Spider-Man 5. By doing that, the next movie can focus entirely on these two superheroes going after Kingpin once and for all. And mind you, Wilson Fisk is also supposed to be an adversary for Spider-Man. That's something we've yet to see in the MCU. It's safe to say Vincent D'Onofrio is in Brand New Day, and all we got from Kingpin was one throwaway line in Born Again referring to Spider-Man.
We know how to take care of ourselves. We don't need a gun-toting vigilante who wears a skull on his chest, or a man who dresses in a spider outfit, or a guy who wears devil horns to save us. No.
Now with all that being said, do I still think that this shot is digitally hiding someone or something? Yes, I think we can contest the veracity of this shot. So now that I've personally ruled Daredevil out, another possible candidate is the Punisher. And people have said, Punisher is already in this trailer, so if he is in this scene, why remove him? Well, I think because of this being the second to last scene in the trailer, if it's also part of the final battle, I think they'd want to hold back some things to reveal when the final product is released. Because having Punisher be there, after previously making it look like Spider-Man is there alone, would still push the hype gauge upward. However, I do not think Punisher is hidden there either. He is familiar with the Hand. As we saw in Season 2 of Daredevil, he was sniping several of them to help Matt get away while he was fighting them, but he hasn't taken them on directly as his own adversary the way Daredevil has, and how Spider-Man will. I think Punisher's arc in this movie won't involve whatever is going on with the Hand. Now, if Sadie is playing Jean Grey, then that could also be her hidden in the shot too. But she is such a powerful character that the final battle just won't even feel like a street-level threat anymore if she actually is there. Now, you could say the same thing if it's the Hulk that's hidden in the shot too. In fact, people have gone on to say the Hulk could take all of those ninjas out in one shot, no sweat. Especially if it's Hulk going savage and careless. So who does that leave as potential candidates? Well, as cool as the shot looks on its own, I said this shot could be hiding someone or something. So, what if at this point of the movie, Peter Parker transforms fully into the Man-Spider, and that's the actual individual that's lunging at all of the ninjas by himself? Not that Spider-Man as his own Homo sapien self needs help to take a measly Sinister Six group of ninjas anyway, but if he has become the Man-Spider, then you already know that it's a wrap for the Hand in this clip. From seeing the discourse online though, the idea of taking on the Man-Spider storyline seems to have some mixed feedback. Everyone agrees that it would be a bold move for the suits to execute, but not everyone wants them to go for it. It would be creepy, it would be weird, it would be unsettling, all of the unfavorable adjectives you can think of, so I can understand why fans would want them to avoid it. In the 90s animated series, the Punisher was also involved in the Man-Spider storyline, trying to put a stop to him, so it's fitting that Frank Castle is in this movie. But should he fail, I think it's a perfect cue to have Savage Hulk come in and be the one to have Man-Spider taken out. And even if Savage Hulk isn't the right superhero to take Man-Spider on, maybe he would go a little bit too far, then maybe it'll be Jean Grey who's the one to bring Peter Parker back to his senses. I personally would be ready to see them do this dark turn, even though I agree with the sentiment that seeing Man-Spider in live action would be nothing but fuel for weeks and weeks of non-stop nightmares. Because if this movie is ultimately meant to be symbolic to bottling up your emotions and burying yourself in work as a coping mechanism, then having Spider-Man turn into Man-Spider by the end is definitely an effective way to get that message across of how important mental health and just plain staying connected with your loved ones socially are for your own well-being. Or else you'll turn into a giant man-spider. So yeah, in all seriousness though, if they are going for this storyline and the Hulk will be the one to stop him, then I hope that he will at least retain the consciousness of knowing that he just has to stop Man-Spider but not kill him. We've seen Bruce wear this inhibitor for 3 installments of the MCU now, and it would be nice to see him as just Bruce again, without having to be stuck as Professor Hulk or Savage Hulk if the inhibitor fails him, or just to have it help make him choose when and when not to transform. The movie could end with Peter no longer lying to himself about the feasibility to live only as Spider-Man and forgoing his civilian life completely and start a new relationship with MJ. But speaking of MJ, going back to the scene with the black scleras and how MJ can be seen in Peter's eyes, another theory going around is that this is actually the symbiote. It would be interesting if the symbiote is included in this movie in a heavy role, but at the same time, Peter already has one demon to be struggling with, and that's his powers mutating and the potential Man-Spider problem. However, another rumor tied to this rumor is how Mac Gargan gets arrested again at the end of this movie and will bond with the symbiote to become the MCU Venom. The problem I have with this theory is that this means skipping over Peter's own symbiote arc, which I thought was going to be part of his involvement in the next Avengers movie he's going to appear in, which at this point I think is probably Secret Wars. That's what's ideal to me, but maybe they will skip straight to the symbiote bonding with Gargan. And either way, I don't think the symbiote will play that much of a role in this movie overall. Maybe just be there in the background. Last year, I pitched some ideas for a new MCU Spider-Man trilogy, and in my rough drafts, one thing that I did get right, which was one of the least things I expected to happen, was bringing Michael Mando back as a Scorpion. Man, there's so much to be excited about. Spider-Man Brand New Day broke Grand Theft Auto 6's record for the most views of a trailer in 24 hours, and on top of that, it made history as the first trailer to reach over 1 billion views. Sometimes it amazes me to think about how 2021 was already a whole 5 years ago, and July is gonna be here before you know it. If you watched this video all the way to the end, thank you so much for stopping by. Yeah. What did you think about my predictions, and what was your favorite part of the trailer? Comment below, let's keep the hype flowing and the conversation going. And until next time, holla at your boy.